All right, I'm gonna just double check the stream here. All right, I'm gonna just double check the stream here. Okay. إن الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه وعليه نتوكل ونتوب إليه ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. أما عباد يقول عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون وبعد. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about, of course, the situation going on here in America and to some extent even going on in the world. And inshallah, I'm going to bring things from a slightly different perspective. I'm going to bring things from the perspective of being African American myself, and I want to bring to us another lens, another perspective of looking at as what is happening in our situation here at the moment. And certainly what we saw in the video of the officer, once again, a police officer brutally murdering a non-threatening and non-confrontational Black American citizen. We've seen this before time and time again, and yet it doesn't get any more tragic. So this time around, we have seen a different reaction. And while some of it is positive, I want to actually draw our attention to some larger issues. And I want to caution the way that our community would like to jump into the fray and lend their voice and perhaps even lend a helping hand, which, alhamdulillah, is it's admirable to do so. And I'm glad that in some ways our community is being motivated. But I want us to look at why this time are we being motivated to participate in the outrage. And I'm going to be blunt. I am very disappointed that over the last decades, when there has been the same phenomena repeated many, many, many times, our community either was silent or even played a silencing role. There were those within our community, we don't get involved in these kinds of things. This is an issue for non-Muslims, with the presumption that, number one, those things that would affect African Americans would not also affect African American Muslims. So I'm quite disappointed and have had a lot of frustration, as have many Black American Muslims, have been frustrated with the quietism and the silence of our community, to be quite blunt, for many decades now. Which is why there is a voice amongst us now, mine included, that kind of looks at the rest of the Muslim community with a combination of where have you been all this time, MashaAllah, and I don't think you're doing that right. So as I said, what has triggered it this time? You know, I spoke to my mother on the phone the other day, and she said, wow, I think this time things are so different is because we caught it on tape, so to speak, right? It was filmed or recorded on a mobile device. And I said, well, no, we saw Rodney King. Matter of fact, we saw Rodney King quite clearly recorded before really the advent of mobile phones. So it's not only the technology that has made this, or that can be solely say because of mobile technology, that this is why people are outraged. Certainly we saw it and many people became outraged, but that cannot be the only reason. And more particularly, why has it been that there has been a national and even global outrage amongst non-white communities, in the black community, in the black Muslim community, and in particular in the non-black Muslim community? Why this time are we jumping up and shouting slogans that, to be quite honest, most of us don't even know what those slogans mean? We don't know the history of them, but we just jump into it. And it really shows how our minds and our actions and our hearts are not controlled by our reverence for Allah, for His book, and for the example of His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because if that were true, we would have been just as involved in every other previous incident, but we were mostly silent. No, and this is the cold, hard facts we have to face. Like many other aspects of our life, they are governed and controlled, particularly on the subconscious level, of what is normative of the dominant culture. I'm going to try to avoid saying white or white people or white supremacy today, not because those things aren't true, but because those words are so heavily charged with certain things that certain defenses immediately get erected. I'm just going to say the dominant culture. In times past, the dominant culture did not have much of a reaction to those equal incidents of dhulm, of oppression, of brutality. And because, to be quite honest, it's apparent that is who we take our marching orders from, we most part remain silent. And as I said, we even went to the point of silencing. There were voices in our community, both amongst black Muslims and non-black Muslims, saying we don't get involved in these kinds of affairs. There's still a few of those voices today, but far less so. The vast majority of us have jumped up and grabbed our placards and ran into the street, or tweeting and Facebooking and Instagramming Black Lives Matter. But I'm very sorely disappointed about how we have allowed our sensibilities to be completely governed by the dominant culture. And I want to relate this to some passages in the 20th chapter of the Quran. In Surah Taha, Allah says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَلَا أَخْتَرْتُكَ فَاسْتَمِعْ لَمَا يُوحَى. Allah speaks to Moses, to Musa alayhi salam, and says, I have chosen you, right? I have chosen you, so listen to what I am revealing. إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا. I am Allah. This is very, this verse is one of the few in the Quran that Allah refers to Himself in the first person singular. I am Allah, and there is no one to worship but me. فَاعْبُدُونِي, therefore worship me, وَأَقِيمِ الصَّلَاةِ لِذِكْرِ, and establish the prayer for my remembrance. إِنَّ السَّاعَةَ آتِيَةٌ أَكَادُ أُخْفِيهَا لِتُجْزِي كُلَّ نَفْسٍ ما تسعى. The hour is coming. And this is critical to our understanding of all oppression and our concept of all concepts of justice, is that the hour is coming. And therefore, no matter what effort we make to establish justice in this life, it will never be complete and perfect, and it will never replace the necessity of the day of judgment, of Allah rewarding everybody for what they did, for the people that did good and the people that did bad. This is not meant, when this kind of rhetoric is used or mentioning this ayah in this context, this is absolutely not meant to discourage anyone from seeking justice in this life. Matter of fact, we have an imperative, right? To be qawwamuna bil qist, as the Quran says. We have an imperative to stand up for justice. But we must understand that there is no utopia in the pursuit of justice. There is no heaven on earth. There is no doing away with the necessity of ultimate justice on the day of judgment. I say this because what happens to some is, in lieu of being able to have an ultimate justice in this life, and they see what is the temporary triumphing of systems of oppression, the heart's despair, the despair of the mercy of Allah, because they have become so convinced that unless ultimate justice and complete justice happens in this life, not only will there never be any complete justice, but it's a sign of Allah not being real and God not being present and listening to us. No. So when we say this and are reminded of this, yes, we go out and we give it our best effort and we stand against all types of oppression. But we understand that effort is a human effort, even when it's guided by revelation, and it will not ever replace the necessity for Allah to throw down and declare permanent justice and judgment. Inna sa'ata atiyatun akadu ukhfiha. Allah is saying the hour is coming. What is it? For every dhalim and for all madloom, for every oppressor and for all of those oppressed, understand the hour is coming. And this should be part of how we warn all false deities. And undoubtedly, the government in this country is no different than Fir'aun. It has done the same things. This government has done the same things that Fir'aun did. When Allah talks about, right, Fir'aun, and he tells Musa alayhi salam, اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Go to Fir'aun. He has gone beyond all bounds. What has he declared? I am the highest in the land. This is what Fir'aun said. Well, we have nothing other than a different articulation of this. What was Fir'aun doing? يُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ. He was slaughtering the male children and doing all kinds of, kind of psychological terrorism to the women. This is no different than what the history of this country has done, not only to African Americans, not only to the Africans that were brought here and their descendants, not only to the indigenous peoples. It's still doing it to this day. Just look what happened in Iraq with the so-called war on terror, of which those people had nothing to do with 9/11, and yet we went and visited unbelievable terror and destruction upon their country. And the New York Times never saw it fit to publish the names of all of the dead Iraqis that this country is responsible for in the front pages of the newspaper. This country has gone beyond all of the bounds and has committed all of the same sins as Fir'aun. So when we want to get involved for the cause of justice, it cannot be according to Black Lives Matter. It cannot be according to any other slogan. It has to be according to إِنِّي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدُونِي. I am Allah, right? There is no one to worship but me. And, therefore worship me. Go to Fir'aun. Go to this pharaonic government because it has gone beyond all the bounds. And Allah has said, فَلَا يَصَدَّنَّكَ عَنْهَا مَنْ لَا يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَا. right? Do not let those that don't have any iman in the last hour, right? Don't let those, and they follow their whims and desires, right? وَاتَّبِعُوا هَوَاهُ فَتَرْضَى. Don't let them debar you from your pursuits of worshiping Allah, which includes establishing justice based upon His framework. Don't allow them for them to debar you, and don't follow their ways, otherwise you will be destroyed. Fatarda. So we want to pursue justice, but now all of a sudden we're all hashtagging Black Lives Matter. We're all shouting this, and yet Black Lives Matter, according to their own website, has said what? That we are here to dismantle cisgendered privilege and uplift black trans folk, especially black trans women. Does the Muslim community stand for people artificially and synthetically trying to change their gender? Because this is what this organization is about. They have thrown out a slogan that goes and penetrates our rational senses and hits us emotionally. Black Lives Matter. Yes, the lives of everyone matter, and in particular in the United States, which has a focused oppression of black people. Yes, the lives of black people absolutely do matter. But this movement has all kinds of ideological problems that makes it very hard for us to not only support as Muslims, but if we really care about the lives of black people. They want to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family restructured required by supporting each other as extended families and villages. They want to break up the family. They don't support the nuclear family. What, a husband and a wife? If we care, and I say this as a black person and as a Muslim, if you care about black people, it cannot be only just caring about what the police do to us. We have to reformat and reconstruct black souls, black families into some type of unity. This is what Islam is here to do. This ideology of Black Lives Matter will absolutely not bring about the help that many of us earnestly want to give to the plight of African Americans that we see that has come so sharp in focus in the brutal murder of George Floyd. I relate this to a doctor that wants to help a patient that comes into his office and says, "Doctor, I don't feel good. Help me." And the doctor just says, "Okay," and just starts helping him or helping her without knowing their medical history. How are you going to help a people? And I'm saying this particularly to the non-black Muslims. I am sure that your intentions are in the right place, but your methodology is skewed because, one, you haven't read the white papers, right? And you can read into that as a pun and not a pun, right? You don't know the history of black people in America. You don't know the intricacy of it. I see people saying, "Oh, the problem with black people in America is because of slavery." What you don't understand is slavery in itself is a byproduct of a much larger system. So the dhulm and the oppression visited upon us black people in America due to slavery is merely a byproduct of a byproduct. You don't know the history. So just like a doctor cannot truthfully diagnose what is the issue with the patient without knowing also their medical history. What have other doctors done to you? What other medications have you taken? What else is going on? If we care about the lives of black people versus Black Lives Matter versus hashtag Black Lives Matter, if we care about the lives of black people, then you must get to know our history, not the story, not his story, and not the version of history that the dominant culture has given to you, and nor the version that hashtag Black Lives Matter has given to you. You need to perhaps get to know a few of us and let us educate you on our history. But going back to the Quran, and this is where, again, we have to deal with the despair that black people and others feel in light of this continued issue of oppression and violence from this country, particularly against black people and otherwise. So Allah says to Musa alayhi salam, he says what? وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَدَيْنِكَ يَا Musa. Oh Musa, what is that in your right hand? He said, this is my staff. قال هي عصاي أتوكل عليها. I lean on it and what I use it in my role as being a shepherd, right? He says, قال ألقها يا موسى. Musa, throw down your staff. فألقاها فإذا هي حية, right? It suddenly became a snake. تسعى, right? Slithering around. And then he commanded them, take hold of it. قال خذها. Take hold of it again. And what? It became a snake. And he's likewise, he tells him, put his right hand near his body and pull it out, and it's white. Why is he telling Musa these things? Some of us read this and I don't get this. Why is he telling Moses to throw his staff down and becomes a snake, put your arm under and turn out it's white? Why is he telling him to do this? Because Allah is telling Moses, and he's telling us, that reality is not dictated by laws of nature. It is not dictated by governments. It is not dictated by anyone else but me. Inni and Allah. Right? La ilaha illa ana. This is why I am Allah. And there is nobody else to worship but me. Reality is dictated by me, and I can change reality anytime. One of the most liberating things for us as African Americans is to know that, number one, true liberation is a possibility. Whether we achieve it or not is secondary, but to know that it can happen is most important, and that it will happen, through our relationship with Allah. Allah will be the only one that will set us free. This is why our da'wah and our engagement of the situation has to be from a Islamic Muslim perspective that is in congruence with the words of the Quran. He is telling Moses, I can change reality just by simply commanding it to be what it is. Likewise, the freedom that we seek will be from the changing of reality, not by laws and legislation. Because, in fact, we have seen the laws in this country change several times, with the amendment of making us from 3/5 of a person into a whole person, as if it is the government that decides that we are people. We have seen the laws that they changed in the 60s after they murdered all various civil rights leaders and changed the laws on the books. But our condition as black people did not change. If you look at all of the metrics, they didn't change. Why? Because you still have to change in here. It has to be a change of the heart. And if all of the attention is upon laws and governance and nations and whatnot, it will only make us continue to go to the government for not only our freedom, but our very concept and our identity as people. No, we are ibad Allah. We are slaves of Allah. We are worshippers of Allah. We are a creation of Allah. Even if we aren't Muslim, we are a creation of Allah. And Allah says, what? وَلَقَدْ قَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam. Allah has given all of the sons and daughters of Adam karama, dignity. This comes not from governments. Matter of fact, we demand from governments to get out of the way of what is due to us from the Creator. This has to be our engagement of the lives of black people. So I say this to you as a black American Muslim, as an imam. You have to know our history. You have to know your book. You have to know your Quran. You have to know your Prophet ﷺ. You have to know our Anbiya. Moses wasn't just for the Jews. He is for us. Why is he repeated so many times throughout the Quran? Why? It's for us to know. Right? He said, this is some of our greatest signs. لَنُرِيَكَ مِنْ آيَاتِنَا الْكُبْرَى. These are some of our greatest signs. Now, اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Now go to Fir'aun. Now that I have showed and demonstrated to you, reality can change. Simply by my command, go to Fir'aun because he has transgressed all bounds, and change reality. Because nothing is beyond my capacity. This has to be how we engage with the lives of anybody that is downtrodden. Black people in America, Yemenis that are being tortured and crushed by the Saudi government, the Chinese Muslims that are being brutalized by their own government in China. We have to reinstitute in the hearts of the people Number one, the very possibility of freedom and the very possibility of liberation, not through any legislative act, but because Allah is real. That has to be how we get to a Black Lives Matter. So I say this first and foremost to remind us not to be drawn in to sloganeering. And just because people are using slogans, it doesn't mean, no, I'm not saying we can't be involved. But we have to be involved in a way that will not only be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we have to be involved in a way that will also really bring about genuine change. Because changing the laws does not change the hearts of people. It did not clearly fix the issues that we have in Black America that go far beyond police brutality. And did not clearly change the hearts of some elements of white society, because clearly we see people in the police force that are continuing to brutalize, Black people, African Americans. So let us move beyond the sloganeering. Let us ponder this book. Let us ponder this message. And let us take from it a true methodology and framework of hurriya, or freedom, that is based upon being a slave to Allah. True freedom is in submission to Allah. True freedom. As I mentioned on Instagram yesterday, there's an amazing book by a Brazilian academic that talks about the slave rebellions, particularly in 1835, by African Muslims that rebelled against their oppressors in Brazil. And guess who led the slave revolts? The Muslims. Because they understood it is not appropriate for any creation to lord over them, nor is it appropriate for them to sit in a position of being madloom. Right? This is our history. So once again, don't just take his story. Don't take the hashtag version of it. We have to engage the actual history, and then engage the book of Allah and see how oppression was dealt with. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله وليكم ولي وليكم ولسائر المسلمين. First, I ask forgiveness from Allah for me, for you, and for all of the Muslims. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا. استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. So I want to take us back to Surah Al-Taha and the way that Allah sent Moses and Harun. Right? Moses went with his brother Aaron. Moses was a little bit scared to deal with. To go into Fir'aun was pretty intimidating. And he was not eloquent in his speech. So his brother Harun, Aaron, was sent by Allah to go with him. And together they confronted the idolatry and the tyranny of Musa. And what was amazing, it's not only that Moses was successful in defeating the magicians and the illusion of power that Fir'aun was trying to project, but those that Fir'aun was deploying in his service, his own magicians, switched sides, and they said, what? Now we believe, قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِرَبِّ هَارُونَ وَمُوسَى. We now believe in the Lord of Harun and Musa. We see now you, Fir'aun, as being false. This is another angle of how we need to engage the lives of Black people so that they matter, is that it also has to engage some of those who are in the deployment of tyranny, but perhaps not tyrannical themselves. They may be brought about to turn on their masters and go, you know what? No. We are no longer going to brutalize Black people or Mexicans or whoever else or people overseas. Right? We're no longer going to brutalize the Iraqis. We're no longer going to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia to bomb Yemen back into the Stone Age. And they will turn on their false masters and say, Amanna bi Rabbi. right? Of who? Harun and Musa. They was like, now we believe in the Lord of Harun and Musa. We believe in the Lord of Muhammad. We believe in Rabbil Alameen. That has to also be part of how we engage, not just simply smashing and tearing down and burning and just lashing out randomly. No. And look at the disposition. This goes into our psyche. Look at what Fir'aun says to his magicians when they switch up. قَالَ آمَنْتُمْ لَهُ قَبْلَ أَنْ آذَنَ لَكُمْ. Are you going to believe in them, in their God, in the Lord, in their Lord, before I have authorized you to do so? So all of these decades, black people have been catching hell. And our Muslim community has largely sat silent or even played a silencing role. And then this time around, because the dominant culture decides that, okay, now we're going to, we jump into it. This is no different than Fir'aun. Hey, I haven't authorized you to do this. Or in our case, we've authorized you now to protest. So we protest. But before they didn't authorize us, we were silent, even though it goes against our book and it goes against our prophet. We have to free our minds first from the clutches of Fir'aun, from the clutches of this tyrannical government, from the clutches of the society. We have to help ourselves get free before we help anybody else. We've all been on an airplane and they say, what? You know, if there's an emergency and the mask drops down with oxygen, you have to apply that to yourself first before you can go help anybody else. We want to go and jump in and help black people, including black Muslims and including non-black Muslims. We want to go in and help just the general black public. We ourselves are not even free of this ideology because we don't engage our book. We don't read it. It is the book that is talked about more in reverence in Western secular academic institutions and universities than it is amongst ourselves. This is the harsh truth that we have to deal with. And look at, he says to them, you know, I will cut off your hands and feet and crucify you unless you turn around on this. And they say, what? You could do with us whatever you want, right? We will never prefer anything but his signs. قالوا لن نؤثرك على ما جاءنا من البينات. The magicians of Fir'aun, when they saw the truth and then aligned with the truth, they said what? We will never prefer anything other than clear signs, the truth. So do whatever you want to us. That is how we really need to engage the broader American public. That is the true liberation, not from laws being passed, because many laws have been passed and clearly they have not and will never be sufficient to make lasting change. Lasting change comes in the hearts of the people being freed from false idols. And when they are freed from false idols and they are directed towards the truth, as Allah has said, throw your staff down, it'll turn into a snake. I control reality. Reality in every facet, in every aspect, is controlled by Allah. That is the truth that we need to stand upon to make everybody's life matter, to make the lives of black people matter, to make the lives of the Uyghurs matter, to make the lives of every creation of Allah matter. So inshallah, I hope that we can take the time today, read the 20th chapter of the Quran. Read it from beginning to end. It won't take you that long. And reflect upon it, and then do not allow yourself to be governed and jumping into swimming pools we don't even know what condition the water is in a sincere but sincerely misguided attempt to help some people. We need to help ourselves first. We need to be upon truth first. And we need to be upon the correct moral platform first, not one that wants to encourage people to either chop off their genitals or glue on ones or change their... We cannot be involved in this kind of ideology and think that Allah will then bestow His help and His liberation and His salvation upon such a thing. No. it has to come by His way. So inshallah, may Allah Ta'ala guide us, guide the American people, make this balad aminan, make this balad, make this country, make this place safe for people, guide us through the truth and put us upon the sabil of La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. May Allah guide all of us to Islam and keep us upon the path. May Allah Ta'ala bring us justice in this life, and of course may Allah exact ultimate, merciful, and relieving justice on the day of judgment. May He give everybody what they have earned. For those who have earned good, may He increase it. And may Allah, those who have earned evil, may Allah give them what they have earned. But may Allah attach our hearts to Him, His book, and His messenger. وصلواته وسلامه على نبيه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. صلواته وسلامه على نبيه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه